Members of Mueller's team say the Attorney General didn't correctly summarize their findings. The 2020 race for the White House and the latest on the Democrats in the campaign. And why some say the American dream is fading away. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The Department of Justice stands by its initial summary of the Mueller report. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. The DOJ's defense comes in response to reporting that began with the New York Times, claiming people close to the Russia investigation believe Attorney General Bill Barr undersold some of the conclusions in the report.
White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us from the North Lawn with more on the latest and the president's reaction. Ben?
Well, John, Jenna, President Trump says the New York Times has no legit sources and calls this bad reporting. He tweeted today, "There is nothing we can ever give to the Democrats that'll make them happy. This is the highest level of presidential harassment in the history of our country." The Attorney General spent nearly 48 hours breaking down the 300-plus page Mueller report into a 4-page summary. In it, Barr stated the investigation cleared President Trump of collusion with Russia. But the papers report that people close to the investigation are unhappy that Barr seemed to downplay negative information within the report. The White House fired back at that credibility of those claims.
I have full confidence in the Attorney General and his assessment. And let's not forget that the people that have been involved in this process, they've wasted 2 years of their life, and they need to find a way to validate it.
Now, the DOJ also pushed back on the newspaper's allegation, saying in a statement that Barr released the report's bottom line findings and his conclusions immediately without attempting to summarize the report. John, Jenna?
Yeah, Ben, Democrats on Capitol Hill also not letting this go. How are they responding to these newest claims?
Yeah, Jenna, you're right. On Wednesday, Democrats authorized a subpoena for the Mueller report. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said, "Just show us the Mueller report. That's it." But this is after Barr already said he plans to release a redacted version of the report mid-April, if not sooner. So it could happen, John and Jenna, as early as next week.
Yeah, Ben, and it's not just the Mueller report. Democrats are also now pursuing for the release of the president's tax returns from 2013 to 2018.
Yeah, John, the president's tax return could soon become another huge legal battle between the White House and the Democratic-controlled House. Trump says he's being audited and cannot release those returns.
But until such time as I'm not under audit, I would not be inclined to do that. Thank you.
What I can tell you is the president's filled out hundreds of pages of a financial disclosure form, which puts all of his business dealings in that, like every other member of government has to do. And it gives you a great look at the president's financial holdings, his business, and how successful he was over the lifetime.
Sarah was talking about those financial holdings. Lawmakers want the IRS to provide Trump's personal and business returns from 2013 to 2018. But as you just heard from the president, he does not plan to do that. That's the latest outside the White House. Ben Kennedy, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Ben. Well, President Trump is easing up on threats to close down the southern border. He now says he'll slap tariffs on cars from Mexico if Mexico doesn't do more to stop illegal immigration and the flow of drugs into the United States. If that doesn't work, Trump says he will then close the ports of entry. Many lawmakers have been warning against the economic damages of shutting down the southern border, something the administration has acknowledged would be an issue.
Well, the 2020 Democratic presidential field is big today, growing even larger, with Ohio Congressman Tim Ryan announcing on The View he's joining the crowded field. Amber Strong has a look at the already busy campaign season.
With less than 3 months to the first debate, Democratic candidates are crisscrossing the country and making their opening arguments to voters.
Boundaries of protecting personal space have been reset, and I get it. I get it.
But even before entering the race, former VP Joe Biden is on an apology tour of sorts after several women have accused the VP of making them feel uncomfortable. Friends from both sides of the aisle have come to his defense, including former Attorney General Eric Holder, Meghan McCain, and Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. Buttigieg boom.
One day we're hoping to be in the actual West Wing.
Thanks to a slew of media coverage and pointed interviews, the 37-year-old mayor of South Bend, Indiana, saw a big surge in donations. The Afghan war vet went from a relative unknown to raising $7 million. He's expected to make his candidacy official April 14th. Speaking of booms, first quarter fundraising totals are in. Senator Bernie Sanders raking in $18.2 million, Senator Kamala Harris raising $12 million. And after an impressive start, Congressman Beto O'Rourke settles in well behind the frontrunners. Speaking of Bernie Sanders, the Democratic Socialist has decided to hold a town hall with Fox News. That's notable considering the DNC's decision not to host a debate with the network. Amber Strong, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, Amber. Well, CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody is here now with more on 2020. David, Joe Biden, he is on this apology tour, as Amber called it. How do you think he's handled this response so far? It seems like that video that he put out has gone over pretty well.
Yeah, I thought it was pitch perfect, actually. I mean, we really can't ask for anything better. He didn't apologize necessarily because you know what? He really can't because he doesn't really think he did anything wrong. I mean, I think that's really the heart of the matter. However, it'd be interesting to see if he gets in, whenever he gets in. When is Uncle Joe going to run? But if he eventually gets in, how everybody's going to be looking for the demeanor and how he interacts with folks. But look, I think the bar here for Democrats, I mean, where is the bar exactly? I mean, you know, they went with the hashtag #MeToo movement. Makes sense. So much legitimacy in the movement. But now what? Where's the bar exactly in terms of what sexual assault, sexual harassment, and otherwise? So it's difficult.
They're in a tough place.
David, a lot of people rush to Biden's defense. There are some still who are noticeably silent. What do you make of all this?
Well, first of all, the silence, I want to talk about that for a moment. Where's Barack Obama? I haven't heard anything. You can hear a pin drop. Hillary Clinton, where is she? Having said that, you're right. There have been quite a few other prominent Democrats that have come to Joe Biden's defense because they don't believe he's creepy. They believe that this is Joe Biden, and they believe it's authentic, and he's not trying to do anything here at all that's mischievous. And I think that's why they felt the need to stick up for him.
Tim Ryan, David, he's the latest to join this crowded field of Democrats. What can you tell us about this Ohio congressman?
He's one to watch. Remember, we go to those progressive scores, and we talk about Amy Klobuchar being a C, and Kamala. I'll have to get it right eventually. Kamala Harris, an A. He's a D. In other words, he's a pretty decent moderate. He's from Youngstown, Ohio. That's Trump country. That's blue-collar Trump country. He voted with the president 20% of the time. That's a lot more than any of these other Democrats. So someone to watch out for. He's going for the yoga vote. That's right. You heard it here first. Can I look into the camera and say yoga vote? Okay, cut that clip out.
What's the yoga vote?
Great follow-up. It's college-educated white women in the suburbs who do yoga. That's the point. It's the yoga vote. You'll hear it here. You've heard it here first, and it's
David, trying to squeeze in one more quick question.
No.
Mayor Pete Buttigieg, another one to watch. Yeah. Some bit of an underdog, but he seems to be popping up everywhere. How much of a contender could he possibly be?
I think he's a dark horse for sure. He's cutting through the clutter. He's very good. He's authentic. He kind of dumbs it down, and that's the most important thing. Also, he's polling at 2%, or at least nationally, if you look at all the polls together, 2%, but his fundraising is third, $7 million. And Google searches are, everybody's searching about him right now.
Well, abortion is always a hot topic. No doubt it'll be that case in the 2020 elections with a crop of late-term abortion bills that are popping up around the country. David, stick around because I want you to weigh in on the other side of the soundbite. Earlier today, I interviewed someone who plans to jump into the race. His name is Henry Hughes, a former Republican who became a Democrat in opposition of the Iraq War and who is unashamedly pro-life. As he told me earlier, pro-life Democrats may not be as uncommon as some believe. It all depends on how the abortion question is framed.
Even though the polling data in the Democratic Party says Democrats self-identify as being pro-life 47%. So the party is 50. If you ask people to self-identify with they're pro-abortion or pro-life, it's 53 to 47. So we're almost 50% of the Democratic Party self-identifies as pro-life. And so people are terrified, however, of admitting. I remember when even 20, 30 years ago, when I ran for mayor of New York against Giuliani and Dinkins, and I would go out campaigning, people would come up to me and say, "Hey, I'm pro-life, but I can't say anything about it." And so a lot of the people who are pro-life are literally scared because in the Democratic Party, If you say you're pro-life, the NARAL mafia will come after you and you will not get the nomination. You will not get the job as director of parks. I mean, literally, if a pro-life person who seeks to be appointed director of parks in New York City will not get the job because they're pro-life.
Is there room in the Democratic Party for evangelicals?
We can take over the Democratic Party. In other words, if we went to Iowa, for instance, and all of the evangelicals who go to the Democratic caucuses came out and voted for me, we would win the Iowa caucuses. And so in some states like New York, it's very hard for us to do that. But in much of the South, if you went across the South, we would have a chance of winning every single primary if the evangelicals participated. But what happens is that people get dissuaded from participating because, A, if it wasn't for me, there would be no pro-life candidate for them to vote for in the presidential primary. And even with me, I'll appear on your network, but the Democratic Party will try to keep me out of debates, and much of the rest of the media will pretend that I don't exist. So many evangelicals are not even aware that there are candidates in the Democratic Party that they can support, and they're reluctant to go to meetings where everyone feels that they are terrible people because they're pro-life. So we as evangelicals, we have to participate in the political process and participate in the Democratic Party in order to take it over.
Henry Hughes, a pro-life Democrat. John, great interview. David, question for you. Even if Democratic lawmakers say they're pro-life, does it affect policy at all?
Well, no, because here's the problem. You know, how do we say this? Bless his heart. But the problem is there aren't any pro-life Democrats anymore in the party, and we have the statistics to prove it. Take a look at what has happened throughout the years. Look at this, the demise of the pro-life Democrat. 1999, there were 43 pro-life House Democrats. 2006, 37. Now, today, 1 pro-life Democrat. That's a problem. Also, look at this. In 2003, as you can see there, remember that vote to ban partial birth abortion back in the day, 15, 16 years ago? 63 House Democrats actually voted for the ban. Now, fast forward to 2017, that ban on the fetal pain bill, 3 House Democrats voted for that. That's the difference.
David, quick follow-up. You heard Henry Hughes talk about evangelical Democrats. Do you think that there's much potential for a pro-life evangelical movement in the Democratic Party?
Absolutely not. And the reason is because of exactly what he said, which is that NARAL will come after you. I mean, and it's true. And to a degree, they probably won't deny it. They won't say it that way. But the truth of the matter is that they know that they have the Democrat Party pretty much lockstep with them on all of this. And it is good politics to be pro-choice in the Democrat Party. That's the way it's going. The sad part of all of this is that science isn't on that side of the equation at all, and the new millennial generation is growing in support of the pro-life movement. So at some point, the Democrats are going to have a reckoning here about the new millennial movement here and where they stand on abortion.
All right, David Brody, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, Republicans hit the big red button going nuclear to push through lower-level Trump nominees. The nuclear option will change Senate rules to expedite the confirmation of the backlog of judicial and executive branch positions. The rule change is a double-edged sword, but Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says that's a risk he's willing to take.
And the fallout triggering this nuclear option is something that could be radioactive for both Democrats and Republicans down the road.
CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson joins us now for more. Abigail?
That's right, guys. And Leader McConnell says if there is a fallout, he's ready to take the heat for it. Today, I spoke with the Heritage Foundation's Thomas Shipping about the implications of triggering that nuclear option and why these confirmations are so important to the majority leader.
We're talking about 17% of the federal judiciary across the country is empty. I mean, if anybody thinks about a company or an organization that they know of, if 17% of the workforce was not there, how could it function properly? And 90% of the vacancies that are out there today are on the district court level. That's the bottom level of the judiciary. Those are the courts where people take their cases. So the people who are being hurt by that are people who need to rely on the courts to handle their cases and the criminal justice system. And we have almost record vacancies today. It's hobbling the entire judiciary, and it's doing so for nothing but political purposes.
Mm-hmm. Now, one source in the Senate says this isn't exactly going to create a conveyor belt for confirmations, but how far is this going to go in clearing up the current backlog?
Well, I worked in the Senate for 15 years, and I can tell you there's no such thing as a conveyor belt in the Senate on anything. So no, it's not going to do that. There are several different tactics that are being used on the Senate floor by Democrats to slow down the process. And what Republicans just did only addresses one of them. So, you know, it's going to improve things a little bit. We do know from back in 2013 and 2014 when very similar rules applied just for those 2 years. But we do know that confirmations can increase significantly. And vacancies were a lot lower then, and there were fewer nominees to actually work through the process then. So there's every reason to expect that we could make significant progress in clearing up some of this vacancy backlog.
Now, this is the third time in 6 years the majority party has made unilateral rule changes in the Senate. Now, this is a side of Congress where things are supposed to slow down, but now there are these moves towards mutually assured destruction on both sides. Will we see more of these in the future and maybe more things that they take the nuclear option on?
Well, I mean, if you don't like something, then of course you describe it in super apocalyptic terms. If you like it, then you're talking about in terms of, you know, making the institution work more efficiently or something like that. Yes, the Senate has kind of crossed some barriers in the last number of years about how it decides how it's going to handle nominations and legislation and so on. But in the big picture, that's what the Senate does. The Constitution gives the Senate the power to determine the rules of its own proceedings. And that's exactly what the Senate is doing. Depending on the circumstances, that can be, you know, somewhat bold or kind of chart new territory. But then, you know, everything that's done for the first time is unprecedented. So it's just a matter of the Senate deciding what's the best way to operate.
And as more and more Senate rules are changed unilaterally, one still stands: the legislative filibuster to delay votes. That's something President Trump has already endorsed and McConnell has quashed. But a Democrat majority might feel differently if it wants to push through an extreme agenda. Jenna, John?
Well, why some say the future of the quintessential American dream will live or die by the church's role in communities. Welcome back. Some believe the American dream is dying, but others say it all depends on who you ask.
New data shows that the heart of whether a community thrives or dies lies within its churches. CBN's Jennifer Wishon sat down with journalist Tim Carney to talk about his new book, Alienated America.
Hillary Rodham Clinton. Whether it's hopping from state to state following presidential candidates or chasing breaking news wherever it happens, journalists like Tim Carney cover lots of ground. And through his travels, he kept coming back to the same question: why do some communities thrive while others bomb?
I wanted to know why so many people thought the American dream was dead, because I think that attitude of hopelessness itself causes all sorts of bad outcomes. I saw numbers about deaths of despair going up. That's suicides, drug abuse, alcohol abuse. You even see the lifespans shortening. So I knew something was wrong out there, and I wanted to figure out what it was. And too many of the explanations were just about economics, or they were blaming people. Oh, these are deplorables clinging to their guns and Bibles and not willing to take care of themselves. And I knew that those explanations were wrong.
So he hit the road, dug into the data, and compared communities from the bustling to the busted.
And the biggest difference was the strength of community institutions, particularly in Middle America. It was the strength of churches. Those were the places where they were strong and bringing people together regularly. You had better outcomes. And where they were disappearing and population was disappearing, the people left behind were really struggling.
Popular culture likes to paint the dark picture of religion in America, he writes, but the actual data point the other way. In other words, if you want to be happy and thrive, go to church. We know President Trump enjoyed enthusiastic support among evangelicals in the 2016 election, but Carney's research also paints a clearer picture of those so-called forgotten men and women Trump resonated with early in his campaign.
You write that to explain Trump's core supporters, many commentators pointed to the factories that were closing, but they should have been pointing to the churches that were closing.
Early on, I think his core supporters were the ones who heard him say, the American dream is dead. And where that sounded the most true were the places where they didn't have any more the Friday fish fries, where they didn't have any more the high school football games that everyone was going to, where the local library had shut down, where parents weren't involved in the schools. Those are the places that the American dream seemed most dead, even more important than the economic factors.
What is the American dream? Is it the things that accompany the American dream, or are those things actually the American dream, like potlucks and going to Christmas concerts and T-ball?
That's exactly right. So many people have an economic explanation of the American dream. I think that that's related, but it's off base. It's not owning a home. It's not making a ton of money. It really is being connected, usually through an institution, to your neighbors, to other people who share the same common higher purpose.
But good old-fashioned neighborliness can be hard to find. Technology increasingly keeps us inside our homes, disconnected from our communities. There's also the problem of Big Brother. As government spending increases, faith-based charities decrease.
Another big thing is a push by some politicians for secularization. There's a belief that the church doesn't belong in the public square, that you should just sort of go back and only do sort of worship services on Sunday. That's a new idea, and it's a really dangerous idea, because for the middle class in America and the working class, church has always been the main place where they get connection, where they get a little safety net, where they get a sense of purpose.
You write, more of America is a wasteland of alienation, less of America is the village. And you know, so many people remember Hillary Clinton's "It Takes a Village," right? Yeah. And it does, according to you.
It does take a village to raise a child. Now, whatever Hillary Clinton meant by that, she might have meant a government program. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about neighbors. I'm talking about a church organization that runs a sign-up list so people are bringing you food when your baby is born. I'm talking about older couples that can tell you, here's what to expect when your kid becomes a teenager.
So what's the solution?
So if I accomplish anything with Alienated America, it's hoping that somebody's going to go out there and say, you know what, I'm going to start up a new club in my town. I am going to start up a new ministry in my church. That's what I'm hoping, because that does happen in America. It used to happen more, and it can happen again.
If you do it, Carney's research suggests you'll be happier, find an invaluable support system, and on your way to living the American dream. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Still ahead, meet the Pope's pick for one of the Catholic Church's top spots in the U.S. Welcome back. Well, the Vatican is appointing Wilton Gregory as the Catholic Church's newest archbishop here in Washington, D.C.
He'll replace Cardinal Donald Wuerl, who resigned after facing criticism over how he handled the priest's sexual abuse cases. Gregory was the head of the U.S. Bishops' Conference when it adopted a zero-tolerance abuse program back in 2002. He currently serves as the Archbishop of Atlanta, where he's seen as fairly progressive in that role. Gregory is known for falling in step with Pope Francis's vision for the Catholic Church. Well, that is going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation.
Have a great evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.